We like to be told, apparently, what to be paranoid of. The less paranoid you have to be, the more resources we expend towards it. And the more likely it is to be. The more we waste resources avoiding it. A lot of Hollywood movies, they show the psychos as some stranger or somebody who holds a grudge, right? And a lot of the psychos in movies, they don't know their victims. A lot of them have mannerisms that are autistic. Tourette syndrome is commonly associated with autism. Did you know that? A lot of people with Asperger's have Tourette syndrome. But we spend all this time being paranoid of the stranger on the loose. Spend a lot of resources trying to catch them, even if they don't exist, which is completely stupid. The people who, well, rape is the big one, isn't it? Rape and child molestation. Let's go with child molestation. 1%. Now, in rape as adults, it's apparently 2 to 3% because of colleges. You have a 2 to 3% chance as an adult of being raped by a stranger. But that's not what this is about. What this is about is the paranoia of the stranger to the point where you hate strangers and every stranger you're holding at arm's distance. I can get why you would want to do that. I do. But I don't understand why would you want to treat people horribly? Them being at arm's distance is good enough. Beyond that, don't be a fucking dick to them because they have a penis and could possibly maybe do something like that. Because the fact is, most of the time it's the daddy. Most of the time it is the father of the victim. The father. 80% of the time it is one or the other parent. Why is it one or the other parents and not just the father? Because women can be predators too. That's right. Now we got all sorts of evidence that suggests that. Not only suggests it, but shows it and proves it. Women can be predators too, and are. And a lot of the studies done recently and over the years do show that women are more prone to a lot of these psycho behaviors than men are. And depending on the behavior, it's anywhere between 3 and almost 20 times more. They are also a lot more likely to get away with it, a lot more likely to fall through the cracks because of gender, a lot more likely to get leniency because of gender. This is what we teach in the United States. That's not saying the right or wrong of it. I personally think that it's wrong. I think it's wrong to have a different set of rules for these people than for these people. I also believe that every situation is different and all sides should be taken into account. If you are in your house and you invite your neighbor over for dinner, and then they sit down for dinner and you shoot them in the back of the head, or maybe they don't even make it that far, you decide that you're going to shoot them. Well, you've committed murder, right? You've done something wrong. But what happens if they come into your house and they are literally trying to kill you? That's a different story, right? Now, make my day law aside. The thing is that even if they come into your house and everything is perfectly legit with the make my day law, and the person that you killed was literally trying to murder you, you're probably still going to have a court date, if not a few of them. You will probably have to have extended court dates and need to get a lawyer because the family of the person who is trying to murder you might even come after you. They might try to come after you in court, civil court. If they got the money and you don't, they're going to win. It's not a wrongful death, it's self defense. It's against the Ten Commandments to kill someone, is it not? So, if, let's say, for example, that I were a real, true, honest, faithful Christian, then when somebody was trying to beat me to death, I would have to just let them. The Ten Commandments say, Thou shalt not kill. If we want to take that literal, if you went out and shot yourself a deer during hunting season this year, you killed. That's something where we, in courts especially, we want specifics. We want we want more than just that. Thou shalt not kill. Does that mean not kill anything? If we harvest the wheat, are we not killing the wheat? If we pull a tomato off the vine, did we not just kill that tomato? So people have very vague rules like that they can use to twist and warp and contort and manipulate. We get told that's just the world we live in. We just have to accept it. No, we don't. No, we don't. There's the narrative. You get invited over to somebody's house and they shoot you, and then they put a gun in your hand. They can say, "Oh, well, you tried to shoot me first." At that point, you're trying to sell the narrative that you did the right thing. But the thing is that there is a big difference between gunning for somebody and protecting yourself. There's a big difference between someone shooting back because they're being shot at and somebody just wanting someone to kill. Now, if people are shooting at you, is it okay to shoot back? Because the law does the otherwise in most situations. At the same time, like, if you got a choice between breaking the law or ending up dead, which one are you going to pick? Some of y'all would probably freeze and end up dead. I am one of those people who would probably freeze and end up dead. A lot of your fantasies are based on the fact that you never bothered to grow out of it and you never bothered to expand or explore or learn. You just want to maintain your assumptions, and a lot of things that you think of as fantasy, they've been done already. They're not fantasy. It is a reality. You could work towards something like that. You could work towards your dream. You just got to trim it back a bit. you got to go, all right, well, am I living in Narnia or do I live in the United States of America? Does magic rule the laws around me or does physics? If they lifted them bricks with magic, I am probably going to have to find a different way to do it than they did it. But stacking a brick on top of a brick on top of a brick is still just stacking bricks. The structure itself is made out of the same thing, bricks. I've seen houses that are made out of stacked cordwood, that's firewood. I've seen houses that are made out of mud. I've seen houses that are made out of mud brick. I've helped build a house that's made out of cob. I also helped make a few structures that are kind of a combination. There's a lot of that stuff that I am really interested in. And although I have the experience of each individual piece of making a lot of those houses, that comes down to anybody who's ever made a cob stove. You're making a little stove that you can cook stuff in, or possibly just to keep you warm and make sure the heat that comes out of it goes specifically the direction you want. But when you've made a cob stove, you've done every part of what you need to make a cob house. You just didn't make a big cob house. You're just making a stove. You guys tell yourselves a lot of things are impossible. That's the difference between neurotypicals and people like me. Neurotypicals tend to believe what they're told and tend to live in fantasy and pretend everyone else is living in fucking fantasy. They tend to give up on their hopes and dreams and get bitter and hate on everybody else. Often to the detriment of their loved ones and themselves, because they usually go into the bottom of a bottle. If they don't go into the bottom of a bottle, they shoot it into their arms, they snort it up their nose. For us, we try to do something. We try to actually do something instead of getting drugged out of our fucking minds. But then again, you assume that it's our fault, that everything in society isn't perfect the way that you want it. And so you punish us until we have a meltdown, and then you force us to take drugs. Fuck. Starmagia typed, I've always wanted to build a cob house. It's pretty easy. That land that I'm looking at in southern Colorado, it's mostly sand, so it would be pretty difficult to build a cob house. But it's got a lot of grasses on it, and they're long grasses, so it's good structurally. Um, Also, you're allowed to have up to 2 horses out there and some chickens, so there'd be plenty of dung. You really only use the dung on the inside layers. A lot of people don't get that. The dung is because it has certain amino acids or some sort of scientific trap like that that helps to preserve the grasses that are holding everything together. Um, but the outside and the inside layers, you don't have to put dookie in it at all. You can if you want to, but that's something other people don't really think about either. Is that cow feces is what's the word I need to use for this? Not inert. Well, I can't think of the name for it. It's all right. Um, there was something that I was going to look up real quick, and I don't remember what it is. So let's see. The labels that we have to deal with, especially the term mentally ill, because it is a blanket term. It can be used to insinuate guilt, and that's good enough. Paula Boyle type much prefer a cob house than in an estate with 500 identical houses. Dormant? No, not dormant. Hospital clean. What's that called? Not disinfected, but um, sterile. When people grow hallucinogenic mushrooms, they usually do it in cow fecal matter because cow fecal matter is sterile. If they don't do it in cow fecal matter, they like to do it in a wheat rye. Um, oh my god. Oh, a lot of times they use husks, but the reason for that is because uh, mushrooms are prone to mold. So if you are going to be growing any kind of mushrooms, and it doesn't have to be hallucinogenic, any kind of mushroom, you want to grow it in something that's not going to have a bunch of mold. Um, I wouldn't recommend growing mushrooms on cow poop though if you're going to eat them because they're going to taste like cow poop. Starmacia type adobe also sounds cool. Adobe is cool. There's also different types of adobe, and that's cool too. We got a lot of the dwellings around this area. You know, we like to show all the teepees, whatever. But they had actual like roundhouses here. We had roundhouses, we had lodges, we had a lot of stuff here that you won't find anymore. Um, Everybody thinks teepee. I'm not even sure if teepees were. I'm not sure if teepees existed before white people came. From everything that I've been learning about and reading about with teepees, um, most natives before we started making them march west lived in communities similar to what we got today. It's their communities. Matter of fact, there's evidence, I believe, in Minnesota, the Great Lakes area, of one of the largest cities to ever exist, possibly the largest city to ever exist in North America. And they're saying that it was bigger when it was around than anywhere else in the world that was comparative. I mean, it's got a huge population, and there's this big old debate about it since the 1960s when they first started finding this stuff. If you look at the Chinese archaeologists and the American archaeologists, they do things different. Same thing with British archaeology. In British archaeology, they're looking for archaeology that's possibly potentially thousands or even tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in some cases, of years old. They're Let's say they're looking for a Norman castle. It's made out of wood. They're not going to really find anything, especially if it's a wet area where it's up on a hill. If it's up on a hill and it's a wet area, that wood's going to rot away pretty quickly because it's going to get wet, and then the water is going to drain and the oxygen is going to fill in and it's going to deteriorate quickly. So they find those wooden objects by finding color distortion in the soil, where at one point in time it was undisturbed soil. That soil is still there, but you also dug a hole here to put a load bearing post in. So when that post is gone, what's in that hole is partially comprised of the organic material that used to be that post, but it's also comprised of the stuff that fell in, stuff that was higher up that, now it's going further down. And then you end up with a soil that's a different color in that post hole. So then when you notice you got 10 post holes and somehow oddly they're all straight and in a row, or they're almost round or are round, then it tells you that it's not just some sort of geographic thing. Now, this one that they got up in Minnesota, I mean, we're talking about it encompasses like 20 square miles, where pretty much anywhere that they dig in that area, they're finding stuff like this. They're also still finding stone artifacts and stuff. So that shows that there were people living there. The stone artifacts show that, yes, there absolutely were Native Americans living there. These weren't Viking villages that were wiped away, where there was, 20,000 Vikings there. These are long term settlements. But we don't hear about that anywhere. The one show that I did see about it is, well, it's pretty screwed up. It was one of those alien conspiracy shows. I'm like, the aliens didn't fucking build that. Are you kidding me? Yeah, aliens came down here to North America to build wooden post structures. No, they didn't. But it was also set up, a lot of it, on a street grid system. And it seemed like some of the stuff they had over in Europe, where when you died, they build you a house. Your whole family comes together. They build you a house. It's your house. When you die, they close the door, and that's how it works. But also in this part of Minnesota, they're saying they just like a lot of these bodies that on Time Team. Those of you in Great Britain have seen Time Team. You watch Time Team and you see how they're excavating and they find like a button or they find a coin that it's the consistency of chalk. It just falls apart in their hand, or they're looking for remnants of what they know to be um, a burial site, a Stone Age burial site or a Bronze Age burial site. But it's also, because it's older than dirt, they find the bodies based on some slight discoloration in the soil, where if it was during the Iron Age, some of the first iron objects were adornments. Um, or they're finding a piece of bronze, or they're finding glass beads, blue glass beads. Um, a lot of them start off uh, in France, actually, on the mainland. And they find those all over Great Britain, these blue beads. They find them in Stone Age settlements, Bronze Age settlements, Iron Age settlements. These blue beads going all the way back. The thing is that the victims have to take it for good reason. And I'm sorry, I had to look back at what the name of my video was so that I could remember. But the reason that the victims have to take it is because you're expending all of your resources looking in the wrong fucking direction. You're looking for strangers. The money that we spend looking for strangers, if we spent that money on actually putting a lot of these dads away, that would be money well invested instead of money wasted. Instead, we spend a lot more money to lock up their victims, to lock up their sons and daughters. Your daughter cuts on herself, so now she's mentally ill and suicidal and should be punished. We just want to help you. We just want to help you. But you don't help her. You don't listen to her. You try to convince her that it's all her fault. It was her choice all along. You stuff her full of fucking drugs. When she misses her friends enough, well, she'll change her mind. She'll go back to her predator because not getting to see her loved ones kills her more than the abuse. Starmasia type Adobe also sounds cool. Are those in Nebraska? No, they're not. Um, Not most of the ones I was talking about. We had like half houses here. They This area it didn't have a whole lot of trees except by the river. So a lot of camps were built next to the river. That's also a good source of water. It's actually just a creek. And back then, um, during the summertime, the creek would dry up and you actually had to dig for water. Um, but the houses here, a lot of them were made mostly of dirt, and they'd go down to the river and they'd pull some boughs off down there and use them partially for structure. And I've seen like 6 or 7 different styles of what they used to have here. I haven't gotten to see them in real life, mostly just pictures and sketches from old explorers. They come through to trade with the Cheyenne or with uh, the Pawnee. So the Pawnee, this is actually Pawnee territory here, or actually, it's about 10 miles north and 30 miles east where Pawnee territory starts. But a lot of these communities, you know, they they were changed before white folks ever headed out this far. Basically, when we started moving Native Americans out of the East Coast, they had to go somewhere, and they went somewhere where other Native Americans lived. And those other Native Americans took notice. They knew what white people were before they ever saw any white people. The victims are victimized because they don't have the power position. The power position means that you're the one who's the owner of the house, or you're the one whose name is on the lease. That's your power position right there. Predators like to get power positions. They can use that to pull in victims. Ah, that girl is homeless. She has no place to stay. If I want some of that, I can just invite her to stay at my house, and I'll invite her to have some of my drugs and alcohol, and then I'll take advantage of her. And if she doesn't want the drugs or alcohol, well, we'll just see how the night goes. Most of the women that I knew who were homeless got raped often because they didn't want to freeze to death. And it wasn't homeless men raping them. It was mostly college students or supposedly good men who took them home with good intentions. You want to believe a preacher, you want to believe an officer, don't you? They would never do a thing like that. It's another reason that the predators get away. We have the technology now that we can save the American taxpayers a lot of money, and we can save the cops a lot of their trust issues by forcing them to wear body cameras at all times while on duty. A lot of people keep saying, "Well, we need to change the laws, make it illegal for cops and judges to do these things to black people." They do them to a lot of other people that aren't black too, by the way. The problem is there's no way to enforce it. In the 1960s, when these laws first started coming out, they didn't have body cameras. So the stuff continued until the 70s. And in the 70s, they made the same laws again. But again, no body cameras, no way to enforce it. Then we get to the 80s. Same thing. The late 80s, we start getting cameras small enough that they could possibly be body cameras, but it's basically a big giant thing on your fucking shoulder, looks like an electronic parrot. So the 90s, that's when it becomes a possibility. In the 90s, we can have body cameras. In the 90s, we could have passed legislation to have body cameras to stop this shit. Because in the 90s, we had repeats of the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. Rodney King wasn't the only person in the 1990s who had this issue. I'm not sure if y'all remember, but during the 90s, over that situation right there in specific, there was white people who were dragged out of their vehicles and almost beaten to death just for the color of their skin. Don't be white here. But instead of the police and lawmakers making it so that these officers had to wear body cameras so that we don't have repeats of shit like that, well, they did the same thing they did in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. They made it more illegal to do these things to people of color. Then we have 2000, another repeat. I mean, we're just repeating the same shit. Here we had the ability to have cameras in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s. They're keeping themselves in the dark ages for a reason. They want to be able to get away with doing these things. If an officer has a bad day, the other officers are going to be more understandable. If they take it out on somebody who is a supposed perpetrator, they are now victimizing someone. Whether that person is innocent or guilty is of no consequence. Because this person is not taking it out on them based on whether they're guilty or innocent. He's got a fucking chip on his shoulder. Those officers who assassinated that guy in Arizona over playing a fucking video game, as they're walking up to the door, their body cameras caught them being assholes about the situation. Complete assholes about the situation. They showed up there with a shitty fucking attitude. Then the first thing they did is start making excuses. They straight up murdered that man. But again, he was in a house, so people cared. How many of y'all know who Thomas Kelly is? Please look up the name Thomas Kelly. There are more hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined. Times five. Times five. And that's not even counting police interactions. What are police interactions like for us? Well, I want you to consider that over half of those killed by police last year were disabled, and nearly half were homeless. You think your fear is legit. I'm not saying your fear is not legit. I'm saying that mine is not only just as legitimate, it is more legitimate. Did you know that we're actually less likely to get violent than you are? A lot less likely to get violent than you are. But you want to play the bias, the wives' tale, that we're the violent ones. And you play on that to this day. The police play on that. It's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. A teacher who wants to rape you has a power position. But they don't have as much of a power position as a police officer or hospital staff. If a police officer breaks the law, he just charges you with breaking the law and makes it your word versus his. If the hospitals break the law, you're in a fucking hospital. It's your word versus theirs. They're using their professional position to break the law and to get away with it, to make their victim, well, impotent. Your victim no longer has the ability to defend themselves because you have the power in your position to make sure that there is doubt cast on everything that they say for the rest of their life. But not just doubt cast. See, if you doubt something and somebody is telling you this, you should look at it. Now, I understand if someone says, hey, there are purple aliens taking over the lake right fucking now. Can't you see them flying over the lake? And you look over and there's nothing there. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, in that case, you're probably not going to investigate purple fucking dinosaurs or purple anything that's flying around the lake. You don't see them. But when someone is saying, hey, I'm being assaulted because of this, 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 and this, I have it documented, I can show it to you, that's a different fucking story. When someone is saying, hey, I was assaulted repeatedly by human beings, not dinosaurs, not aliens, human beings. You don't get to pretend that I'm schizophrenic for that. You don't get to pretend like I'm mentally ill for that. And you sure as hell don't get to use that as an excuse not to look at the fucking evidence. If I'm telling you it's purple dinosaurs, then fine. Yeah, don't look at the fucking evidence. I wouldn't. You're telling me about purple fucking dinosaurs or purple aliens or some shit. But when it comes to police brutality, that's not fucking okay. It's not okay to pretend that somebody is mentally ill or schizophrenic because they're trying to turn in a police officer who brutalized them or the officers who helped them. These guys get to destroy evidence because nobody went in with me, because nobody took me seriously. All they had to do was say mentally ill and everything is my fault. And all they have to do is keep on pushing that mentally ill over and over and over again, and nobody listens to me. Well, you were in the hospital in Scottsbluff. Yeah, you sent me to the hospital in Scottsbluff for trying to turn in your officers, asshole. And he did this after I had been obviously on my Facebook and YouTube speaking about these officers long before they locked me the fuck up. Starmagia type, no one was charged for his murder. You're right. You're talking about Thomas Kelly. He actually was schizophrenic. He was also homeless. He was also beaten to death by police who laughed while they did it. And those police officers got away with. Now, first of all, I want you to pay attention to the fact that there was no gun on his person. None of these complications that we have in any of these other cases are actually present in Thomas Kelly's case. The weapon is in these other cases that people are like, oh, well, you know, we can use that to cast doubt there was a weapon, or the cops said there was a weapon. In Thomas Kelly's, there was no weapon. There was just Thomas Kelly, scared for his fucking life. You notice how once this became a racial tension thing, all of a sudden we've got both black and white people going out and lighting homeless people on fire, beating homeless people to death. Both sides. Oh, there's racial tension. We probably can't get away with doing this to a black person, but if it's a homeless black person, or we probably can't get away with doing this to a white person, but if it's a homeless white person, a mystery typed just dropped in to say stay safe. Take care and good night. Good night. The countries that I see doing the most harm are the supposed first world countries. The United States, Great Britain, France. These are the countries that are doing the most harm to the homeless. We're supposedly progressive. In a lot of these third world countries, there's a lot of homeless people. Making anti homeless laws wouldn't really work. And it's not like they have the infrastructure to go victimizing every homeless person out there. Hell, in the United States, we don't have the infrastructure to victimize every homeless person out there. Actually, yes, we do. We have the infrastructure to get rid of homelessness within a day. It's just how do you want to do it? You look at all these religious people who look away from poverty and cruelty, but as soon as Notre Dame got lit on fire, they're donating. They're donating. They are sure donating. They care more about a physical object than human lives. You think a woman in Tennessee who's starving to death gives a shit whether you build that church or not? You think there's kids in Africa starving to death who give a fuck about Notre Dame? There might be, but they're more worried about fucking food, dude. And it's nice when you're a rich person and you can hire lawyers to do every goddamn thing for you, and you don't have to worry about your next meal because somebody's gonna fucking bring it to you. You got to ride everywhere you need to go. You don't even need to drive. You never have to walk anywhere. You don't have to spend your time trying to figure out where your next meal is going to come from. You're not jumping through hoops for 3 days for a bunch of government officials who fucking harmed you. And you got to stop because you have to go eat. You got to stop what you're doing to go try to find food, even if you got to dig it out of a fucking dumpster, because you can't sustain yourself on nothing. You want me to go to work? I can't get a night's sleep without cops harassing me in Boulder at this point. Most homeless people can't. We're not allowed to sleep at night. How well can you perform your job when you've gone 2, 3, 4 nights without any sleep? You might get lucky and be able to sneak in an hour here or there. You're still going to work. You're still tired. You get off of work. It's too late for you to go. Food is because you got off of work at 5 or 5:30, and you still got to travel to where the food is. By the time you get there, they're going to be done serving food. So you don't get to eat because you're working. Everybody takes it out on the homeless. Every group takes it out on the homeless. It's acceptable. Your life sucks. Preacher touched you, but he's untouchable. Take it out on a homeless person. Daddy can't keep his nasty cock beaters to himself. Take it out on a homeless person. The boy that you've been stalking don't want nothing to do with you. Go find somebody you can call mentally ill. If you can't go after the person that you want to go after, you will find somebody to victimize. That's how neurotypicals work. I'm not going to apologize for not being neurotypical.